Hello, welcome back to Wearing History. I am going to be doing a tutorial for you today on this 1950s jacket. If you're new to sewing, this is a relatively easy pattern to start with because there are no sleeves that you need to set into an armhole. It's cut all in one like a dolman style. You've got basic darts, you've got some buttonholes. You can do this unlined, which really simplifies things. So I'm going to be making up an unlined jacket to show you how easy this can be. When this pattern originally came out in the 1950s, it was sized with number sizing, so it was 2 inches between each size. But in order to simplify things and provide more sizes than it originally came in, I have done it as a small, medium, large, extra large pattern. I'm going to be making the size medium, which is for a 36 to 38 inch bust, a 30 to 32 inch waist, which is my current size. And there is ease built into this because you'll be wearing it as a jacket over something else. It has about 2 inches of ease built into the waist, which sounds perfect for me because I'm on the larger end of the medium size. So if you are on the smaller end of the size that you're making, you may want to test it to make sure that your waistband doesn't need to be taken in. There are notes in the pattern packet for how to make the waistband smaller and adjust the jacket to that size. So I'm not going to be going over that in the video because it's here in your pattern packet. I added it for you. I'm working off of the printed pattern. This one is already pre-printed. Of course, you can get it as a download to print at home or to send away to a copy shop. So here are your instructions. Like all Wearing History patterns, this one has the back cover, which I've provided with information. It also has a page of suggestions from me that I have done because I've worked with vintage patterns for so long. So this will tell you about the original source material, and it also gives you watch points to look for. For this particular pattern, you're going to want to watch the waist length. Like a lot of patterns, your waist length can fluctuate depending on your body type. So it's really kind of impossible to make a one-size-fits-all when you're doing woven patterns. I already, since I cut my pattern out, have shortened it 1/2 inch in the waist because that's my body type. So when you make your mock-up, make sure that you check to make sure that the length works okay for you. Now, some ways to make this pattern even simpler are, like I said, to make it unlined, so don't include a lining. You can make it just out of fashion fabric. And another way is to do machine buttonholes, but I'm going to be doing bound buttonholes for mine, so I can show you a little bit of a more advanced technique that you can use or not use at your discretion. For mine, I'm using this really great linen from Kaufman. It has a nice body to it. It's a mid-weight fabric. I'll try to put the name of it down in the link below. Because I live in California, our climate isn't particularly great for wool. So I found if I used something like a linen cotton blend, that it would be something I would wear more in our climate more year round, as opposed to wool, which only gets used for a couple months of the year here. When we think of jackets, we often think of wool, but you don't need to use wool when you're making this jacket. You can use something like a linen, like what I'm using, a linen cotton blend. You can use a cotton. You can use a rayon suiting. You can use a cotton twill. You can use a cotton corduroy. You can use a velveteen. You could even make this in taffeta or in velvet. But if you're using some sort of a fabric with a nap, like a corduroy or a velveteen, you're going to want to allow extra fabric because it will all need to be cut in the same direction. That's the way those fabrics work. So the first thing you need to do is we need to mark all of our notches and mark all of our markings on the pattern, including the darts and the buttonholes. I'm going to transition now, so you're probably not going to see me again until the end of the videos, but I want to show you what my hands are doing so you can see what you need to do with your hands in order to make this jacket. So I'm going to walk you through marking your markings now and your notches. I am clipping in my notches here with my scissors. I'm making little V's. You can also just make a single slit right in the center. I'm going to make a single slit on the edges where the darts are, and also I need to mark where the end of the dart is in a future step. So make sure all of those are marked, then flip it around and do the neckline. You're going to do the notches there. You're also going to want to mark the lines there. Those are very important, as well as the notches on the facing extension and on the collar, because that will be important for attaching the collar in a future step. Now when you get to the cuff, you can see that there are some markings there, some lines and such. Don't forget the shoulder one, of course. And you're probably going to want to mark somehow where the turn up is. You can do this by thread basting or another method, and then of course mark your notches. There's also an important part you needed to mark there on the sleeve cuff that I'll show in a future step. Now I'm going to transfer the markings of my buttonholes, and to do this, because this pattern is printed, I'm simply taking a pin and putting it down at the critical points. I've sort of invented this technique on my own. I'm sure other people have done this as well. And so I just mark it in the entrance of the buttonhole, and then I'm going back up the other side and I'm doing the other side of the buttonhole so I know which length to make my buttonholes. So you see the pin just goes down at those 2 points there. If you are making the open neckline jacket like I am going to do, you only need those top 3 buttonholes, but I marked all of them. Then I marked the part for the dart, flip it over, and now I'm simply going to apply a little bit of pressure to pull the pin through the paper, making a tiny little hole in my paper pattern. And this will transfer the pins only to the fabric. Now I'm taking my removable pin and I'm marking each of those points with that. Make sure you test a scrap first to make sure that this will come out in the wash, and you can get those at any fabric store or online. I'm now flipped it over and I'm marking the other piece of fabric so that both sides will be mirrored. Of course, you're only going to be making buttonholes on one side, but make sure those darts are marked. And you're going to want to mark the darts on the back as well. Now I can take all my pins out. I'm now going to mark my darts because I find it a lot easier to pin them if I have chalk marked them. Again, try the chalk to make sure that it actually will come out of your fabric before you do this. I'm using a ruler and just marking it to the point where I marked with the pin. And on the other side as well, making my little V for my darts. Now I'm going to fold that right sides together, mark the end of the dot. I usually do it long ways like that, and then the rest of it I will match those 2 lines together with a chalk line and pin. I'm holding it up right now because I find it's easier to show you close to the camera, but I usually do this laying flat on the table because it's more precise. Make sure that you work with your fabric and get it to lay flat. You don't want it fighting itself and making like bubbles on the back side because of the grain. I'm doing it here on the table. You can see it's much easier to do when it's laying flat. So that's both sides marked. Now you're going to mark the back neck as well. So mark that with your marking pen, and then again get your ruler and your chalk and just mark that there. After both sides are marked, you're going to pin them just like you did with the front bodice. See, I messed up. I gotta undo a little bit and then redo the line. Happens to everyone. So fold right sides together, mark the end of the dart, and then match those lines up and pin them together. There's my kitty, Mr. Birdie. All right, then after that's pinned, you're going to take it to the sewing machine and you are going to sew those darts into place. That's what they look like when they're done. So there it is sewn, and press it towards center back. And then the other darts press towards center front. Now I need to do my center back seam, so I'm matching back pieces together and I'm going to sew 5/8 of an inch. And there it is done and pressed open. And it took me a while for me to figure out how to finish these seams. I decided to serge them after I put them together and then turn it on the inside, and I'm going to top stitch so it'll mimic that vintage look, but it will withstand the wash. So now I'm marking, I'm matching the shoulders together and I'm matching those notches, and then at the cuff you're going to match to that dot, which I said you needed to mark on your pattern because it's going to release after that point. So now I ease the fabrics together. It might be a little fussy because it's not on the straighted grain, so use your fingers to pull it down and make it lay nice and flat, and then pin all the way along that shoulder seam. And you're going to stitch with 5/8 of an inch seam allowance starting at the neck edge and going down to where it stops on the sleeve. Then I've done the same seam finish there. I'm doing the underarm seams now, so match your underarm seams together, stitch it with 5/8 inch seam allowance, and then I finished it in the same way. We'll continue it next time. Thank you for watching.